Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are on with non Christians. You've been lied to. And I acknowledge the extreme nature of some of the things I'm going to say today. I want to get that out of the way up front. I do acknowledge that some of the things that I say, that I'm going to say today in this live stream, in this message, will sound extreme and not possibly the truth. Bear with me because we're going somewhere. So let's begin. We're going to go on screen share. We're on YouTube. We're on the Christian Witches YouTube channel. We are on the Valerie Love KAISI YouTube channel. And we are also live in the Christian Witches Club on Clubhouse. So we're live streaming online. And if you'd like to see the full presentation, you can go online to ValerieLoveTV.com. Hey, Colton. Oh my goodness, Colton, I would love it if you could come on stage and talk to us. Go to ValerieLoveTV.com, and that will land you at the YouTube channel. And there at the YouTube channel, you will be able to see this whole thing that I'm talking about. You'll be able to see what we're talking about at ValerieLoveTV.com. So first, let's go into an overview of what we're talking about today. So we're just going to give you an overview of what we are talking about because we've got to frame it and we've got to, hey, Aurora Day, how you loving, how you loving, how you loving? Welcome, welcome, welcome. By all means, share this and let's get into it. So first of all, who am I? Because we are live on the Valerie Love YouTube channel. We are live on the Christian Witches YouTube channel. We are live on the Christian Witches Facebook fan page. So welcome on the Christian Witches Facebook fan page. We have over 10,000 witchy wonders, Christian witches. We have on stage with us in Clubhouse, Colton, also a practicing Christian witch, an incredible witch. That I really like. I really like some of our witches, all of our witches. I like and love all of our witches. And we are also live on we're live on the Christian Witches YouTube channel and the Christian Witches Facebook fan page. We are also live in the Christian Witches Clubhouse room. And Christian Witches has a club on Clubhouse. Join that club. That way, when you join that club, oh my goodness, is Jared in the room too? Can you come to the stage, Jared? I don't know if you're at work. You might not be able to speak, but raise your hand if you can, because oh my God, do not tell me. Oh, okay, Jared may not be able to speak right now, but let me know if you can come to the stage. Please do, because oh my goodness, Jared is on stage. Oh my God, and you have the rainbow flag, both you and Colton. Happy Rainbow Month. Happy LGBTQIA month, representing for all our rainbow family. So I'm so happy Jared and Colton are here because Jared and Colton are two of the most incredible Christian mystics, magicians that you will know. Two that I really love, and I'm so happy they're on stage because they can just break down so many things for you. So this is going to be shocking, family. I'm going to tell you, this is going to be shocking what we're going to talk about today. We have a lot to go over. It's material that I have deeply researched. And at the end, I'm going to give you a few more resources. I'm going to give you some powerful resources. So what is the question today? The question is Moses and the Pharaoh Akhenaten the same person? Scandal. Okay, so first, before we dive into it, let's do a little intro. I'm Reverend Valerie Love. If we haven't met yet, welcome. And they also call me KAISI. I'm the author of over 20 books on practical spirituality, the occult, Christian witchcraft. Basically, I'm a seeker of truth. I'm not here to push any particular agenda. I don't have an agenda. I'm just looking for truth. Christian witches, if you're looking and you're like, Christian witches, what is that? And I'll let a couple of other Christian witches tell you what their experience is. Basically, for me, a Christian witch, as we have here on the screen, are magical beings who align or resonate with Christ's consciousness. And I use the term Christian here for Christian witches to denote followers of Christ and not a religion. This is a very clear distinction, because I don't follow the Christian religion, because the Christian religion has been bastardized from the original message of Christ. That's my own personal take on it, from my own inner knowing, my conversations with Christ, and my research. I love churches. I love them. I don't bash any church. I don't bash any person's way of worship. I love it all. If it works for you, work it. I'm here to share with you what I discovered. Now let's go deeper. We are talking, and as if you really want to understand a little bit more about Christian witchcraft, I encourage you to pick up my book, How to Be a Christian Witch. It's an incredible book. Even if you don't want to be a Christian witch, we have a huge, just one of my favorite, all-time favorite reviews on the book about, even if you're not a Christian witch, from a witch that was a practicing witch from another tradition, said, hey, this is like an incredible book, even if you're not a practicing Christian witch, just to understand another path of magic and witchcraft if you desire. Now, let's go a little further, and we're going to go into, let me see if I can do the screen here. There we go. Here's our focus. What do we talk about in Christian witches? Because you're on Witchy Wednesday. I haven't done Witchy Wednesday a lot lately or Christian Witches Church on Sunday online, even though we had Christian Witches Church at the Christian Witches Convention week before last, Memorial Day weekend in New Orleans, the capital of voodoo for the world, and just so for the United States at least, and just so palpable with magic. And we had an incredible time in the cemeteries, and we're going to show you some of the pictures from the cemeteries where we actually captured faces from the cemetery, like looking out of crypts at us. We actually captured it on camera, and we're going to post all of those for you at christianwitches.com. So what do we talk about in Christian Witches? In Christian Witches, we study the magical arts and sciences. That means we study all magical traditions. Here, we also study the mystical arts, including esoteric and occult teachings. We study ancient civilizations. I actually visit ancient civilizations all around the world, including Teotihuacan, which is one of my favorite ancient cities in the world, here in Mexico, where I live currently. I have a home here in Mexico. I live in the Yucatan, not far from the Mayans. So just a stone's throw for me is the ancient city of Chichen Itza, one of the seven wonders of the world. And if you've never heard of Chichen Itza, what's up with that? Because we had a retreat here to Chichen Itza last year. We'll do another one again in the years coming up, because every spring the Kukulkan makes a descent. The serpent makes a descent and causes light and shadow on the pyramid, which is built at the same 15-degree axis as the Pyramid of Giza, as well as Teotihuacan. So the Teotihuacans in Mexico City, right outside of Mexico City, the Mayans and the Egyptians, they were all on the same tip, all of them. So we study ancient cities, ancient civilizations, mystery schools, astrology, tarot, Bible magic, and any other wisdom teachings that lead to gnosis. Anything that we can get our hands on that leads to gnosis, we're diving in. What is the goal? Ascension is the goal. We're not all over the place. We have a very specific intention with what we're doing. This book, if you desire to get it, is Spellcrafting for the Christian Witch, once again by yours truly. And you can go to christianwitches.com and find out all about it. Now, let's dig into Akhenaten. Who was Akhenaten? Akhenaten was ruler of Pharaoh. He was a pharaoh, ruled as a pharaoh for 17 years in the New Kingdom, which was the 18th dynasty. The 18th dynasty, and he started his rule in somewhere around 1353 BCE or 1351 BC. The exact date is not extremely clear. Now, I want you to look closely at these pictures of Akhenaten. If you look closely at Akhenaten, you will see these sculptures that we have of him that have been unearthed fairly recently compared to many of the other pharaohs. He is a strange fellow. As you notice, he does not look like the other pharaohs. Now, he has a birth story that is eerily similar to Moses. I'll tell you his birth story in a moment. Sort of his birth and growing up story. And he was later named the criminal of Amarna. So he became a criminal, And Egypt tried to completely get rid of him. They wiped his name out, and we only just recently found him. When I say just recently, I mean in the 19th century, like early 1900s or so. Now, he was married to Queen Nefertiti, and he was the son of Amenhotep III and Queen Tai. Queen Tai is very important in this story. Now, his name, Akhenaten, kind of means effective for the Aten, or one who is used by the Aten. And we cannot say for sure if Akhenaten, because I've seen other pronunciations of his name, we can't be sure that that's exactly how you say it, because, of course, some things get lost in translation. So the closest that we have to it, and what most people know him as, is Akhenaten. He would have been Amenhotep IV. Originally, he was Amenhotep IV. He changed his name. Now, let's find out a little bit more about his wife. So his wife, who was the royal queen, that was Queen Nefertiti. Now, everybody knows Queen Nefertiti. I mean, she's legendary. Her bust, her sculpture, that sculpture of her bust that's in the museum, it is legendary. Everyone knows Queen Nefertiti. Everyone. She's iconic. Well, what we don't know is that she was married to a heretic. Akhenaten was considered a heretic. Now, Queen Nefertiti founded the city of Armada with her husband, who was Akhenaten, and she bore several children to him, and she had at least 6 daughters. One of them was named Mariaten, and Mariaten means beloved of Aten. So she was really critical in this whole thing. Now, before we go too much into Queen Tai, let's talk about this revelation that Amenhotep IV had that caused him to change his name and change everything. So, of course, he grew up as the child of Pharaoh, and of course, deeply ensconced in all things Egyptian. So, of course, he was deep into the knowing of all the Egyptian customs, especially the royal customs, and of course, all of his father, his grandfather, his great grandfather, they were all named after Amun, which is the Amen part, right? Or Amen Ra or Amun. Because Amenhotep, they always have God's name in their name. So his father was Amenhotep III. Now, it is believed by some that Amenhotep III, who is Akhenaten's father, he reigned for a very long time, for about 38 years. Peaceful reign, super rich, lots of wives, lots of concubines. Who does that sound like? It sounds like the biblical Solomon. So it is quite possible that the biblical Solomon, whom we have no historical evidence for and no archaeological evidence for whatsoever, nor him, nor his beautiful palace, nor any evidence of his temple. We have none of it where they say it happened in Jerusalem. However, all of it is in Egypt. So that's just another thing to consider. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to present to you the findings of research, and I'm here to offer you that you would want to do your own research. And you want to do your interior reflection and meditation on all these things as well. So he had a revelation. And the revelation that he had, which I cannot say was a wrong revelation. We can't argue with anyone's revelation. It was what he did with it after he got the revelation. His revelation was that there is one God. Now, which makes him the father of monotheism. Now, this is radical. Why is this radical? This is super radical. It's not super radical now because we're used to thousands of years of the one God concept, and all the Abrahamic religions have the one God concept, right? Monotheism. Then you have Hinduism, and you have some other, and Yoruba, and some of the African religions that do not have a one God concept, even though in most of them there is one great God, and then you have many gods. And you can have shrines and temples. In Hinduism, they have thousands of gods. You can have shrines and temples to all kinds of gods. Every house has many gods. Every person in the house has many gods. The cities have gods. You go to one city, they have some gods here. You go to another city, that city is of this god. I mean, you could just, in the ancient world, you could throw a pebble and hit probably 200 gods. So for the time he was living, for him to say, hey guys, I had a revelation. It's one God. People were looking at him like, are you nuts? And some people did say he was mad. He was a madman. They said he was a criminal later on. They tried to etch his name off of everything that his name was on. And they tried to wipe him out of the history books. That's how heretical this man was. Now, he changed his name. Oh, the name of this God. What was the name of this God? The name of this God was not Amun Ra, not Ra, no, or any of the multiplicity of gods in ancient Egypt, though there was like a sort of a hierarchy, and there was a structure to the gods, and we know what the gods are about. We know you cannot go beyond, you cannot talk about the gods without talking about Isis, Osiris, and of course Horus. And to say that there was one, and we had Isis, Osiris, Set, Heru, also known as Horus. We had all these gods. Ptah, I mean, just gods and gods and gods and goddesses, and you're going to say there's one, and his name is the Aten, and you're the only prophet of this God. This God only speaks to you. He also came up with something. Now, this is pretty shocking right here, this part I actually love. The God didn't have a form. Now, that was also radical because we know in Egypt, everything had a form. You had either the god with the head of just all kinds of heads, gods that were very visual. It was extremely pictorial. Everyone knew what Isis looked like. Everyone knew what Horus looked like. Everyone knew what Osiris looked like. Everyone knew what just all the gods and goddesses of Egypt, you knew what they looked like. You knew the falcon-headed god. You knew the cat god. You knew Set. You knew what they looked like. And now he's saying, no, it doesn't have any form. The Aten doesn't have any form. What? Nothing that people could latch onto and connect to. So this you could imagine that this was strange indeed. And the way he depicted it was like a disc that looked like the sun, not the sun though. And the disc had rays emanating from it. And you can see this on the screen. I have a picture of it on the screen if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. If you're listening on Clubhouse, you can watch it later on Facebook on the Christian Witches Facebook fan page, on the Christian Witches YouTube channel, and on the Valerie Love YouTube channel. You can see the depiction of the Aten. And it looked like a big sun disk, and it looked like rays emanating out of the sun disk. We're talking energy now. This is energy. And at the end of the rays, it was very fascinating that it had hands, what looked like hands, like blessing the people. So here in this depiction, you see Akhenaten offering to the Aten. You see him very prominent in the picture because he is the only one who is the voice of the Aten. You see behind him, most likely Queen Nefertiti, his wife, the royal wife. Then behind them, you see a little girl who was likely Mary Aten. Mary Aten was their firstborn daughter, her name means beloved of Aten. So you see, when you have the god, you name everyone, and all his kids were named after the Aten, including Tutankhamun, who later changed his name to Tutankhamun because when he was first born, he was Tutankhaten. So this whole idea of this new god, no form, it's only one, I'm the prophet of it, it has energy, and I'm now changing my name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten. In other words, in service to the Aten. And then, if that wasn't enough, just to turn everybody in Egypt just upside down, like, what in the world is this man doing? Then he starts to close all the other temples in Egypt. Now, they were not going for that. closing all the Isis temples, closing all the temples in Memphis. They had two really major temples, one in the north, one in the south, closed them all, and everything was for the Aten. And then he left where he was, like Memphis. I believe he was in Memphis, like one of the major cities, where if he wasn't in Memphis, then he was in probably in Karnak, where the pharaohs would rule from. He didn't rule from where the pharaohs ruled from. He left and went out into the wilderness and established sort of like this commune out in the wilderness called Amarna. Now, Amarna was a great city. The difference is when he made the temples in Amarna, they didn't have roofs, they didn't have tops. So when you look at all the temples like in Karnak and Memphis and the other parts of Egypt, they are covered. He made temples wide open. Obviously, they're covered. It's the desert. It's super hot in the middle of the day. The priests and priestesses couldn't be in there, and sun just beaming on them. He had the temple open because that was the Aten, energy of the Aten flowing to them. Now, if you think that this all sounds very strange and what's the connection to Moses, let's find the connection to Moses right now. So let's go to his mother. Now remember, supposedly Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, according to the Bible story. And in the Bible, it says that there were over 600,000 men, strong men, and with them women and children, which would have placed the number of people in the Exodus to 2 million. Now, at the chronology that the Bible, at the time that the Bible puts the Exodus, there were only 3 million people living in Egypt. So it would have been 2/3 of all Egypt would have left. Now, there is no archaeological evidence whatsoever for 2 million people moving through the Sinai Desert. Now, how do you move 2 million people through the desert and leave not a trace, no pottery, no anything? Yes, they were living on manna, according to the story we got in the Bible, right? The manna fell on every day for them. They ate it, so they didn't have to cook, they didn't have to do anything. Okay, I get it. Yeah, we would have seen some kind of remnants that 2 million people were living in the desert for 40 years. There's none. So let's talk about his mother, Queen Tai. Now, according to the Egyptologist Ahmed Osman, Queen Tai, he says, is the daughter of Joseph. Now, I know what you're going to say. Joseph? How could Akhenaten, if Akhenaten is Moses, how could Moses' mother be the daughter of Joseph? That's like saying Moses' grandfather was Joseph. And anyone who knows Bible chronology knows that doesn't add up. Well, Bible chronology is off. Because if we take Bible chronology at exactly what it offers, it would have said that the first man, Adam, appeared about 6,000 years ago, which means which would have been, if we go 6,000 years ago, 4,000 years before Jesus, that would have been one of the great Egyptian dynasties, and there would have already been millions of people on the earth, supposedly, when the first man and first woman existed. So we cannot take the Bible, for me, it's a wonderful book of energy, powerful. It's not a book of history or chronology or even archaeology. The Bible is a spiritual book. It's a mystical book. It's a magical book. It's giving us allegory and story, metaphor. It's not giving us facts. I don't take the Bible as being a factual book. So, according to Ahmed Osman, and when I really dug into this, I said, you know what? There's something to this. Queen Tai, who was Akhenaten's mother, who is married to Amenhotep, and Amenhotep III, supposedly, according to Ahmed Osman, one of the Egyptologists, is the biblical Solomon. And according to this, the biblical Solomon was married to the daughter of Uya. Now, they do talk about Uya in Egyptian terms. And what Ahmed Osman is offering is that Uya was Joseph, because we do have proof that Joseph did go to Egypt, the Hebrew Joseph, just like it says in the Bible. Now, the time when he went there, what he did when he was there, him and his kids and his parents, that part, not exactly how the Bible puts it. Okay? Well, Queen Tai was not all the way Egyptian. If she is the daughter of Joseph, she is half Hebrew and half Egyptian. Now, the line of succession for Egypt goes through the daughter, the female line. It's not the son. To legitimize your throne, you either had to be married to the daughter, or, which could have been your sister, there was a lot of that going on, or it had to be that you somehow got the succession through the female line, not the male line. The female line was the line of succession. So Queen Tai, did she really legitimately, was she able to produce a true heir for Amenhotep III? Maybe not. Why? Because she was not born in the royal line. Amenhotep was born in the royal line. His wife was not. So, and he was married to other women too. He had a lot of wives. So Queen Tai, if she was half Hebrew and half Egyptian, she would not have qualified to be able to produce a royal heir. So this is what happened according to Ahmed Osman. Here's what happened in the story. Akhenaten had an older brother. His name was Tutmos, because Moses is an Egyptian name. Moses means son of. And it's not a Hebrew name, it's an Egyptian name. And Moses would have been an incomplete Egyptian name because, like we said, it means son of. So like Tutmos or Tutmoses would mean son of Tut. Well, Tutmos died early. He was knocked off. I think he was knocked off, and this is what Ahmed Osman says too, why he was knocked off. It's because the mother was Queen Tai, and though the son, Tutmos, he was a priest to Ptah, and they wanted to give him the throne, but the powers that be, all the people that surround the throne, the royal court, they were like, we can't have him be the next pharaoh because his mother is not of the royal line. Well, Queen Tai, thinking that her son was knocked off, her first son, her second son, isn't she going to try to protect his life? According to the story, when she had him, there was some kind of attempt on his life or whatever when he was a baby, and she hid him. Does it sound familiar? Does it sound like Moses? She hid him. Moses was born. There was a threat on his life because all the Hebrew boys were being killed, and his mother had to hide him. And then he was found, and he was brought to the royal palace, and he was reared and raised in the royal palace. Well, his mother, Queen Tai, very afraid something had already happened to her older son. Something's going to happen to this son. She knows the rules that these kids can't rule if they're not in the line, the lineage. She's terrified for her son. So what she does is she sends him to her Hebrew people. She sends him away for a while. Now, he grew up in the royal court for a little while, and she sends him away. Then she brings him back. And what she does is she marries him to his half-sister, Queen Nefertiti. The reason she arranges for the marriage to Queen Nefertiti is because Queen Nefertiti is of the royal line. She is royal blood. So the only way she can legitimize her son and save his life, basically, for somebody else knocking him off, because it's like, no, you can't be Pharaoh. I know this could be a whole movie, and yeah, this could be a whole movie. So she brings him back when he's like maybe 16 or so, marries him to his half sister, Queen Nefertiti, which that happened a lot. You know, half sisters marrying half brothers and all that. That happened a lot. It was a lot of incest. So that's not too strange. Unfortunately, that was a normal kind of thing. Well, Queen Todd brings him back to the royal palace, has married Nefertiti, and now she can kind of relax because they're not going to bump this kid off, and he's being reared in the ways of the pharaoh. And when one of the customs when the pharaoh was crowned is that his phallus, his penis, would be anointed with the fat of a crocodile so that he could, because the crocodile was a very sacred animal, so that he could have offspring that were blessed, right, by the gods, by God. Well, when you think of Queen Tai being the mother of Akhenaten and wanting to hide him because there was some threat on his life at a very early age, it sounds a lot like Moses. It sounds a lot like Moses. Now, we cannot definitively say just from that one thing that it was Moses. We're just looking at the evidence and we're starting to understand some things about this, okay? Very fascinating. Very fascinating. You know? Now, there's a lot of interesting comments here on YouTube and Facebook. Very fascinating. Okay, let's go further. So now we can look at some things from the Hebrew Bible that we want to keep in mind. Here are some things we want to keep in mind about the Hebrew Bible. It was oral for hundreds of years. So these stories were passed down from generation to generation without actually being written down until much later, far after the events had happened. Same thing with the New Testament. According to the dating of the New Testament, it says that Jesus lived somewhere around 1 to somewhere around 33 CE is when he died. That's the date the Bible gives it. That date is off. Okay, the dating is off. It's already been proven. The dating is off. The Bible is not a factual book. It's not a history book. It's not an archaeology book. The Bible is a spiritual book. It's a book of energy. Now, if you consider that nothing was written down about Jesus until 70 years after his supposed death, that's when you get the first writing about Jesus. So that means we were talking about Jesus and talking about Jesus and talking about Jesus and talking about what he did and talking about who he healed. And 70 years later was when the first people first started to, hey, maybe we ought to write some of this stuff down, guys. That's when they started writing it down. 70 years later, and then you wonder why Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all say different things. Because it was written 70 years later. And what we're seeing with the Hebrew Bible is that these things were written after hundreds of years of passing the story orally. They have a rich oral tradition. Now, the next thing to consider is that the Hebrews were very closely intertwined with Egypt. They lived in Egypt. They got a part of the northeast. They say when Joseph came, they were sort of like the Hyksos, I think is what they called them. And they were like nomadic people, wandering people. And they had pasturing people. They had sheep and goats and things like that. And that they were a pretty, what's the word I want to say? Egypt, the pharaohs had reason to respect them. And I'll tell you why in a moment. And they gave Joseph a very nice plot of land in the northeast part of Egypt, near the Nile River, where it was very lush and where their crops could grow and where they weren't really big crop people, but where their animals could graze and things like that. and they could settle in that part of the land. They had a very good part of the land. Now, it is true that Egypt did have slaves, yet they didn't just have, it doesn't say in the in the Egyptian records, and Egyptians kept records of every single thing. Like we even have grocery lists of Egyptian pottery written on Egyptian pottery. So Egyptians recorded everything. It doesn't necessarily say that there was just one group of people that were slaves. Remember, Egypt was a vast empire, it was a huge empire. And this is like at its heyday. Amenhotep III. He's ruling over a vast empire that crosses the from the Nile River to the Euphrates River. I mean, spreading through Africa. This is a huge empire. And this man is so caked up with gold. He's got so much gold, they're just pulling gold out the ground. He is super rich, like he sounds exactly like Solomon. He built a huge palace. He had hundreds of concubines, like 1,000 wives. He had a huge temple built, and the temple was inlaid with all these stones and things like this. I mean, it sounds exactly like Solomon. So if you're telling the story of Amenhotep III, and his reign was extremely peaceful, there was no war during those 30 something odd years, 36, 38 years that he was reigning, no wars whatsoever. Man was super peaceful. He was a super wise person because he was diplomatic, and he could make diplomatic arrangements with all his neighbors so that no one would encroach upon his empire, and he kept the empire intact for decades. Huge empire. Now, how did they get this huge empire? They went out and they waged campaigns and wars, and they took over lands, and then they bought the captives back as slaves. And this was very common in the ancient world. So you would have had a lot of different kinds of slaves in Egypt, not just one group of people that were slaves. You know, the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, you got to really decode it because it might not be telling you all the things. It's not telling you all the things exactly as they happen. It's just clearly not. Based on what we have, hard facts, history, and archaeology, things that we actually pull out of the ground that we can look at that have dates on them, carbon dating, and all of that. Bones that we can run DNA testing on to find who's the father, who's the mother, who's this, who's that. Now, and people that we can't find at all, Solomon can't find his temple at all, Jerusalem can't find his palace, Jerusalem. So it would just get you to wondering. Now, details of certain stories are startlingly close to stories in the Bible. And many of the names in the Hebrew Bible are Egyptian names. Let's take another example. So Moses is an Egyptian name. Let's take another example, Phineas. Do we remember one of the high priests of the Hebrews, of the Israelites, named Phineas? This also is a Hebrew name, is an Egyptian name. And this Egyptian name, the variation of it is what we see in the Bible as Phineas. The Egyptian name was a person who was a high priest in Egypt. And this is one of the high priests that Israelites talk about, and that he helped build the Ark of the Covenant. So you actually are talking about an Egyptian made the Ark of the Covenant. So that's a conversation for another day because I'm doing more research on that part. This conversation is about Moses and Akhenaten, whom, after I've done all this research, can say these are one and the same person. Now, little or no archaeological or historical evidence of mass exodus from Egypt at the time the Bible claims or at any other time exists. Now, and we have no Egyptian records of a mass exodus from Egypt at the time that they were talking about. Now, this is just telling us that further investigation is warranted, and that, please, two things that will really, really serve us very well are critical thinking skills and research. Critical thinking skills. We cannot believe things that we've been told just because we've been told them. We've got to do some research. Now, Moses and Monotheism by Sigmund Freud. I'm going to give you two references right now. And most of this comes from the argument by Ahmed Osman, who is putting forth that Moses and Akhenaten are the same person, that Solomon and Amenhotep III are indeed the same person, that Yuya, who is the father-in-law of um, who is the father-in-law of Amenhotep III, was actually Joseph. And the Bible does say that Joseph said, God has made me father to the Pharaoh. It says it in the Bible. And I thought, oh my God. Another thing that's in the Bible that you want to pay close attention to is Psalm 104, Psalm to the Aten. Now, Amenhotep IV, also known as Akhenaten, changed his name to Akhenaten. He was like a poet. Obviously he's a dreamer, he's a poet, he's a mystic, he's a metaphysical person. He's getting these downloads from spirit. I think he was really tapped in. His problem was that he was just killing, well, he kind of shut down everything other than his thing. That was his big fatal flaw, because eventually they came for him and he was deposed. They ran him out of there, out of his city, Armana, and they said, enough of you, we've had enough. And then they reestablished all of the gods and goddesses of Egypt. Amun was back in his rightful place, according to Egyptians, and they said that they're going to wipe out Akhenaten and the Aten and his whole one God thing, erase it from the record. So they chipped away, everything was back in the day, they chiseled it into the stone, crunched up all his stuff, took down his whole city with the bricks, took all the bricks down, took his whole city apart, called him the criminal of Amarna. They even said they weren't going to use his name. They never even, you can't even find his name until they dug deeper. And then they found that these bricks that were being used in the city of Amarna, because they would inscribe on each brick as they were building things, you can find these bricks as foundations under other temples that were built. So basically, they deconstructed all his stuff, and because the Egyptians were such great recyclers, they weren't throwing stuff away. They kept using it over and over. They used it to put it deep down, like to form a foundation under something. It couldn't be seen. It couldn't be seen. They wiped them out. They said, you're done. You're over. You're a criminal. We're going to wipe all record away of you ever existing, and your name doesn't even exist. And they really tried to scrape him out of history. But it's very hard to do that with somebody as prominent as Akhenaten. So, of course, we found his city, and we found all his stuff, and found his statue, and found Queen Nefertiti, all in the ground. This is what we're talking about, that if things really happened, you can go find it. But you can't find 2 million people wandering through Sinai Desert, and you can find all these other things. It's not looking good for how we receive the story. Now, the two books that you want to read is Moses and Akhenaten by Ahmed Osman. And the other book you want to read is Moses and Monotheism by Sigmund Freud. Believe it or not, Sigmund Freud's daughter went to Egypt a long time ago, when he was obviously a long time ago, because he was on the planet a long time ago. And she said, Dad, there's something with Moses and Akhenaten. She was in Egypt, she was in Amarna, and she said there's some connection. Can you look into it? She said she was so fascinated. I think Sigmund Freud actually went over to Egypt too, so that he could look at the connection. And he was so deep into, now I don't think he actually said that Moses was Akhenaten. He did say that Moses was definitely connected with Akhenaten, and that Moses was like a chief disciple of Akhenaten and was later killed when Akhenaten was deposed. Because Akhenaten, he did something really strange when he came into his power. He started wiping out all the other temples. He hired mercenaries. He couldn't get the regular Egyptian military to deface a temple. They just wouldn't do it. So he got like people that were foreigners, mercenaries, to deface the other temples, shut them down, get rid of, fire all the priests, get rid of all them. He used an alternative military to do that because the people that had grown up, you try to get a people to rise up against their own gods and goddesses, no freaking way. No way, no way, no way. So he had to get some people that were not in the religion to do his dirty work, his handiwork. And they went all through Egypt and they did his dirty work and his handiwork. And all those priests and priestesses were not going to sit by and let this crazy man tell them there is one God and you're in the, temple of Isis and you're in the temple of Maat and you're in the temple of Ptah and you're in the temple of, and you think we're not going to do something about it. Oh, they rose up and they told him, kick rocks, get to stepping. They deposed him. He ruled for 17 years. They deposed him, and then you don't really hear too much of him. You wonder, where did he go? He went someplace hiding in the wilderness. It is possible that he went to, this is what my research is tending me in the direction of. It is quite possible he went to Ethiopia, because it does say that he went to a place, he married another queen, because you can have many wives. He married another queen who had a son. And when that son came to time for rulership, he had to kick rocks again because the son was going to take over as king. So he could only rule for a certain period of time because he was married to the queen. And when he went to Ethiopia, that's when he took the Ark of the Covenant with him. I know this all sounds like conspiracy theory. This sounds very crazy. And probably some mainstream Bible scholars will call this all pure conjecture with baseless conjecture. And there will be some people in Egyptologists that will say this is Egyptology, that say this is just nuts. It makes no sense whatsoever. Yet, I think it bears looking at that he went to Ethiopia and he took the Ark of the Covenant. And what we do know is that we have been told that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia. Now, many people have said that. I don't know for sure. I do know that is what Ethiopian people have told me, and that Ethiopia has quite a long storied history of Christianity and spirituality that is far beyond anything. They have their own Ethiopic church. Christian church is very different from the Roman Catholic Church, where Christianity went to Rome and just took another flavor and went that way. It's very different from that. And there is reason to believe that perhaps the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia. I'm going to end with this, and then we can have some conversation about this. I'm not here to tell you what to think or to tell you that this is exactly what happened. I'm researching it very deeply, and I am looking at it. And the more I look at it, the more I'm coming to the conclusion that if Moses was an Akhenaten, he was certainly, well, my conclusion is that Moses was Akhenaten. That's my conclusion. And if he wasn't Akhenaten, and I don't think very few people would admit that, because it would just be too disruptive to the Christian faith. It would just be too shocking. Yet we do know that our Bible, including Psalm 104, which is a song to the Aten, written by Akhenaten, and the only place where it says this is a song written to the Aten is in the Catholic Bible. It doesn't say that in any of the Bibles that we have. It does say it in the Catholic Bible that this psalm was written by Akhenaten. So if you look it up right on Bible Gateway or something like that, you can see it says Song to the Aten, and it was written by a pharaoh. It is in the Bible. And indeed, that Akhenaten, if he was Moses, he would have had the kind of burning bush experience. He would have had that something like God told him to write on the tablets. He would have condensed the 42 laws of Ma'at down to 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are exactly from the 42 laws of Ma'at. You can read the 42 confessions of Ma'at. You can read them, pull them up, just read them. The 42 confessions of Ma'at, you read them, you will find in there the 10 commandments. I believe the 10 commandments is a distillation of the 42 laws of Ma'at. It says the same thing. Don't kill, don't, it's strangely, eerily similar. It's too close to not be looked at. It's too close. So that's what I have to deliver to you today. So here's the deal. You tell me what you think, when you consider Egypt and you consider Egypt's very close connection to the Hebrews, to everything that we've been learning about Bible history, it all comes from through that line of Egypt. So let's look at a couple of comments on YouTube. A couple of comments on YouTube. I've heard Imhotep was Moses. I think King Tut's father was Moses. His mother in the Bible was royal. Okay, all right. The Indo-European connection to Egypt can be seen in Nefertiti's face, and Val, the land was called Kemet because the soil was so rich in black. That's exactly right. It was called Kemet because it was the land of the blackened faced people. Absolutely, it was Kemet. I thought that Mansa Musa was turned into Solomon. Interesting, Mansa Musa. Sounds like the United States presidents to me. Okay, Dia, I missed the first half hour. Can hardly wait for the replay to catch up to speed. Oh, it's so delicious. Slaves could have been workers. Some people say they were slaves, but maybe they got tired of being laborers to this big Egyptian causes. Absolutely, could be. I think the Ten Commandments come from 42 laws of Ma'at. That's exactly right, Ian. You have that exactly right. Egypt was invaded for a couple of dynasties until the original Egyptians took Egypt back in the 18th dynasty. A lot of people think Hatshepsut was Moses. Hatshepsut wasn't she a female? Was she the first female pharaoh? Queen Hatshepsut. I've heard that too about the Ark in Ethiopia. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant, they say, is in Ethiopia. I'm going to do some more digging into that one. Yes, I've heard that before. Mary says they deposed Moses Akhenaten and take it to Ethiopia. It's definitely possible. I mean, Akhenaten was the first monotheist, and he could have took Ma'at and made it the Ten Commandments. Yes, yep. Christianity was from Egypt. They took it and made their own version now. That's exactly what happened. It's all from Egypt. I love studying about this. I would love to go to Egypt, absolutely, myself. Can you please do a video on Eber and Joktan in the Bible? I heard that the Hebrew name comes from the name Eber. Okay, I'll look that up, Maya. I will look that up. All right, we're going to close out the live stream and tell us what you think, family. Tell us in the comments. We love the comments. I love reading the comments. This is a community where on Clubhouse, we're going to have a discussion on Clubhouse. And so we're closing a live stream on Facebook and YouTube, and we're going to have our discussion also on Clubhouse. So hop into the Christian Witches Club on Clubhouse so you can hear what our other Christian witches are saying about it as well. And what do you say about it? What are your thoughts? What is your research showing? I'm not here to tell anyone what to think. We're here to discover the ancient mysteries. We're seekers of truth, and we love that all of this is here for us to research. You can look it all up through your fingertips. All right, Christian Witches, that is a wrap for today. ChristianWitches.com. Pick up the books. Be sure to pick up the books. Magical Prayers for the Christian Witch, How to Be a Christian Witch, Confessions of a Christian Witch, and Spell Crafting for the Christian Witch. Pick them all up. Pick them all up. Pick them all up. By yours truly, Reverend Valerie Love. Love you. Mwah. Peace. Love you, love you, love you. Have a beautiful day, family.